Hey guys, so today we've got my 2021 NHL draft rankings. So in the past, I've done a bunch of mock drafts, but this is not relying on the team. This is not a mock draft. Really, this is just a rankings based on the individual players. So this is not affected by which team is drafting first overall or whatever. The draft order does not matter. These are just who I think are the top 40 prospects in this draft ranked, and obviously, this draft is very wide open. So, a lot of this is kind of based on tier, especially with the later players. A lot of them are interchangeable and very close. But let's get started here. So, starting off at 40, we've got Scott Morrow. At 39, Jack Peart. 38, Zachary Bolduc. And at 37, Sean Barons. So, we've got a few D as well as a center. All three of those guys are actually American. And yeah, they're pretty close. I mean, Scott Morrow, Jack Peart, they were kind of borderline um, deserving of making this list. Barons, I think this could be a bit low, and I could see him making the first round. Bolduc was actually supposed to be a top 20, even top 15 pick a year ago, but this year he just hasn't been as good, and which is largely in part because of Alexei Lafreniere not being on his wing, playing on Rimouski. So he doesn't have that franchise player anymore, and that has really shown with stats. So he's fallen outside the first round. And also, I'd actually like to add that I did the top 40. I think these are all guys that I think have potential to go in the first round. So obviously, there's 31 picks in the first round, not 40, but I think these are basically all the guys that could go in the first round. Now, moving on to 36 to 32, 33. We have Zach Dean, Sasha Passaggio, Evan Nouse, and Sam Mutumala. All these guys are pretty close. They're all great players. And I think that one player that maybe is a bit surprising is Evan Nouse. I had him in my first round in my last mock draft, and I think that he is a very underrated player, as he actually has put up some really good numbers playing with the Quebec Remparts in the QMJHL as a defenseman. He put up 22 points in 32 games. So that's very good as a defenseman, and I think he has first round potential, especially a team like Winnipeg, who's a later pick and is in need of a defenseman, could maybe decide to take him and his ceiling. And Passaggio, Zach Dean, and Tumala all have pretty good first round potential as well. Now, moving on here, we've got Isaac Rosen, Nikita Chibrikov, Stanislav Fozil, and Francesco Pinelli. So now we're moving into the first round, and this is very tough for me to make. I had to move this a lot with these guys, and Chibrikov was not in my first round, so that's a change, and I think that he is kind of borderline in this range, as he put up some great numbers in Russia, but I mean, nothing too crazy. He was playing the MHL, so the AHL of Russia, but he's a winger, plays both wings. Same thing with Isaac Rosen, and it's harder to tell with these European players since a lot of the time they only put up 1 or 2 points in 30 games, but they are playing in men's leagues, like Rosen's playing in SHL, so it's harder to determine. But Pinelli, I think, has a high ceiling playing at center, and I do think that he is a great player. He played in European League, the Alps Hockey League, put up 11 points in 13 games. Pretty good, but I think that's more borderline first round talent. Next up, Simone Robertson, Matthew Samoskevich, Oscar Olsen, and Brennan Othman. So Samoskevich is the big one here. He is a new name. Next past year, he put up just over a point per game, 37 points in 36 games with the Chicago Steel in the USHL. As a center, which are great numbers. He's really risen up. Before, he wasn't really supposed to be a first-round pick, but originally I didn't have him in my first round here, but I think he is deserving of this 27th spot, and I think that he has the potential to be a top 20 pick with how he played this past year. Next up, you've got Fyodor Svechkov, Daniil Chayka, Corson Clemens, and the interesting one here, Atu Rati. So let's start with Svechkov. He's a wing and center, plays all four positions, which is really interesting, and I think he's the most wide open player here. He can miss the first round. He can not be a first round pick. I could see that, but I could also even see him being a top 10 pick. Craig Button had him listed as his number 6, which is really interesting. A bit high for me, but he is still a great player, and I think 24 is a good spot as a team could take a chance in the top 10. That's unlikely, and I see him more in the 15 to 30 range, as he'll be a mid to late first rounder. But he did put up really good numbers this year, and some people are really high on him, and he is high on a lot of draft boards. So he did put up 15 points in 15 games, point per game in the NHL, the AHL of Russia. So that has solid numbers, and I think he has a high ceiling there. And the other one is Turati. He's dropped, and he's continued to drop, falling out of my 15 and even top 20 here. I just don't think a team will take him, as he's just hasn't really done anything. Didn't really get better over the year at all. Put up bad numbers, and his comparables are to guys who were third round picks, which is not good at all in previous years. So I think he's definitely going to be a first round pick, but I see him more in the 15 to 25 range. Moving on into the top 20, we've got Matthew Coronato, Carson Lambos, and the redropper, Logan Stankoven, and Zachary LaRue. Matthew Coronato was 16 in my mock draft, and I do think that he's a great player. He put up some big numbers, and I think he is underrated. 85 points in 51 games with the Chicago Steel of the USHL. But Carson Lambos has dropped a ton. He was a guy who was in the mix to be a first overall pick at the beginning of the year and was pretty much a guaranteed top 10 pick. A lot of people had him in their top 5. Now, some people think he's not even going to be a first round pick, which I think is a bit of a stretch. But he has kind of fallen similar with Turati. He just did not play very good at all this year. Not very impressive, so he has fallen a lot and is no longer that top prospect with that elite potential that a lot of us thought he had. But he put up 11 points in 13 games with JYP in the Finnish U20 league. So, almost a point per game as a defenseman, but not playing in that great of a league. It was U20, so kind of expected to be good, and he just hasn't really shown. Been inconsistent. But Stankoven is a really good player, in my opinion, who I think has top 15 potential. This past year, he put up 10 points in only 6 games with the Kamloops Blazers in the WHL. It's a really small sample size, but still almost 2 points a game. There are 7 goals. It's over a point per game. He plays center and right wing. And I think the biggest thing with him is he is undersized, only 5'8", which is why some people have him outside of the first round. But I think he has the ceiling to be a great top 6 offensive player. And then Zachary LaRue, he's kind of hovered in the 12 to 20 range for me, and I think that's staying the same. Next up, we've got Sebastian Cossa, Olin Zeller, Mason McTavish, and Simone Edmondson. So I think this is really the most interesting and the most controversial group of 4 as Cossa and goalie. So he is the number 2 goalie in this class. I have him going 16, and he's my 16th ranked player. Again, this is not where I think they're going to go in the draft. This is my personal ranking. And Olin Zellweger, probably going to be the most controversial one here. A lot of people have him out to the first round, and I will say that I'm very, very high on him. I think he's a great player with high potential. He's one of the youngest players in the draft, born in September, so just missed the cutoff by a little bit. But he put up 13 points in 11 games with the Everett Silvertips of the WHL. Great numbers of a point per game as a defenseman, one of the youngest players in this class, and some of his analytics offensively were incredible. And the biggest thing with him, though, is he is an elite skater. Just an awesome skater, has a really high offensive ceiling. I personally do think that he has a higher ceiling than Owen Power and can be a top 2 defenseman. But the question is if he can get there. Mason McTavish, he is a great player. I think recency bias is a little bit on his side right now. Since he played well in the World Juniors, people have him inside the top 5, top 10. I think that's a bit high, as he just hasn't shown that he is that good. I do think that's a bit high, as he just hasn't shown he's that good, but I think he's still a top 15 pick. And then finally, Simone Edmondson. Now, I'm going to talk about him for a little bit here. He put up 1 assist in 10 games with Frölunda in the SHL. So that's his number in the SHL. Big league, not expected to do too much. Now, in the SHL U20 league, he put up 6 points in 14 games, which is pretty good as a defenseman. And in that Hockey Allsvenskan, 5 assists in 14 games. So that's pretty good numbers. And he is decent offensively. But the biggest thing with him is he is a terrible decision maker with the puck, and one of his biggest assets, he's big. He's 6'4", 6'5". But in a lot of his highlights, he uses his size to get players off the puck, and his size and just having that size advantage over everyone else, with guys being a lot smaller and weaker, makes him a lot better defensively. Even though in the NHL, you're going to have guys like Tyler Myers and Zdeno Chara, who are even bigger than him, and guys are stronger, bigger, and can anticipate this. So if they see Simone Edmondson coming to him, they have the puck, they'll know to make a move, or they'll pass it. So Edmondson will not be able to use his size, and he'll still be a big hitter, but I just don't see the ceiling there defensively. And again, with the puck, to be an elite number one defenseman, you need to be great with the puck. I mean, you look at Cale Makar, one of the best defensemen in the league, Victor Hedman, Roman Josi, they all know they carry the puck and are great point men and are great anchors of the defense offensively. Edmonton's kind of there, has a nice slap shot, but it's just not there and needs to learn how to carry the puck. So he's still a couple years away at the least from the NHL, as he has a lot of stuff he needs to polish up on and a bit some gaps in his game. But his ceiling, I think, for me, is just a number two defenseman. Going to be more defensively, but a solid number two guy maybe on a first pairing, as he can be good with that slap shot and decent on the power play, but you just can't expect him to play with the puck at all. He's not going to be great carrying it up at all, and he's not going to make very smart decisions in the NHL, which is why I think he's outside the top 10, and he is the most overrated player in this class. But again, I think he has a decent ceiling. He's just very risky, as he has a high bust potential. Now moving into the top 12, we have Xavier Bourgault, Chaz Lucius, Cole Sillinger, and Dylan Guenther. Xavier Bourgault is, in my opinion, the most underrated player, this second most underrated player to Olen Zellweger. He put up great numbers. I don't see why people think he's not going the first round, as he was just incredible this past year playing in the QMJHL. So in the QMJHL, Xavier Bourgault, he put up So, with the Shawinigan Cataracts of the QMJHL, he put up 40 points, 20 goals, 20 assists in 29 games in the QMJHL as a center. He's great offensively, can drive an offense, and has that offensive ceiling to be a very good first liner. And I think he can maybe transition to the wing for first line, has that ceiling, but can be also a great number two center. But again, his defense is not as good as it should be, so he's going to need to work on that if he wants to get to the next level. He's going to need to work on that if he wants to get to the next level and really become an elite player, a riskier player with a high ceiling, lower floor though, but I think at the very least he can be a power play specialist, maybe a guy who can drive the second power play unit. Mostly as a bottom six guy though, a bit of a defensive liability, but if he can improve his defense and become more well-rounded, he is going to be an excellent player. Chaz Lucius, he got injured but has an elite shot, so I think he has really had a ceiling. 20 points, had a goal per game, 13 and 13 with the USNTDP as a center. So I think he's a great shot, great offensive player. He did get injured though, which is a bit of a concern, but I think he still has top 10 potential. Cole Sillinger, another pretty underrated player, played for the Sioux Falls Stampedes in the USHL. 46 points in 31 games. In my opinion, has the best shot in the draft, and it's him, Guenther, and Lucius have the three best shots, so it's close between them. But Sillinger put up 24 points 24 goals in 31 games, so he's a great goal scorer, and I think much like Bourgault, great offensively, but I think what puts him ahead of Bourgault is even though he's not as great of a skater, which is his biggest concern, he is good defensively and has a solid two-way game, and Guenther. I think this is where we get into this top tier players, that top 9, Gunther has potential to be number 1. And I would say the gap between him and my number 1 are pretty slim, as I think Gunther can be the best player in this class, a great winger, and as I said, an incredible shot as well. He put up 24 points, 12 goals, 12 assists in 12 games with the Edmonton Oil Kings in the WHL. So led the WHL in points and goals per game, and goals, I believe. So excellent goal scorer and has high potential, but I think it is very close for him, and he could easily be in the top 8. Now, in the top 8, we got Owen Power, Fabian Lysell, Kent Johnson, and Matthew Beniers. Before you get mad at me, I will say that most of the top guys who make the rankings basically just look at size with Owen Power, and he does have a great size. He's 6'6", but the big thing, he doesn't even use his size that much, and he's just have anything else offensively. Nothing that blows your mind at all in his game other than his size, which he needs to learn how to utilize more. And he put up decent numbers in Michigan, but it was only 16 points in 26 games with Michigan in the NCAA. So it is close between him, but I just don't see him as having that ceiling as Brant Clark and Luke Hughes. And he also he has a solid floor, and I think can be in the NHL right away, but he probably won't. But he's going to be a top 5 pick at least, probably top 3 for sure. But I don't think that he will be as good as a lot of people think. Lysell is another underrated player. 3 points in 26 games with Lulea in the SHL, so he's playing in the SHL, playing in the top league in Russia as a right wing, and he plays with a ton of energy, super fast skater, and I think that is something really good, which gives him a lot of potential, has a first-line potential right there. I think will be at least a solid top 6 winger, still a couple years away, but I think if he can polish parts of his game, he can be an elite player. Kent Johnson has the highest ceiling for forwards in this draft, period. Matthew Beniers has the lowest ceiling out of these guys in top 8, but highest floor, most NHL ready. His ceiling, I would say, is a very good 1B center, a great second line center, and number 2 center. But his floor is a third line shutdown center, which is very good. I think he could be a third line center right away coming out of the draft because he's a very good two-way player and great on both sides of the puck, going to be great on the penalty kill and can score. But with Kent Johnson, he has the ceiling. He has an elite ceiling, elite offensive driving number 1C, can do great things with the puck and kind of plays a similar game to Patrick Kane, but maybe a bit worse. But I think he has a pretty high bust potential and just has a super low floor. Beniers, I would kind of compare to a guy like Anthony Cirelli with a bit better offensively because he can play offensively but very responsible defensively. Now let's move on to the top 4. Here we have Jesper Wallstedt, Luke Hughes, William Eklund, and Brant Clark. Jesper Wallstedt is best goalie in this class, best goalie prospect we've seen since Carey Price, going to go in the top 10 for sure. He's not going to go in the top 4, I don't see that, but I have to rank him this high because he is just so good. He's by far, based on talent, it's not even close. He is a generational goalie prospect, better than Askarov and Spencer Knight, and I think he has potential to be a top 2 goalie in the league, winning many Vezinas, and can challenge Vazzy for best goalie in the league, can be right up there with Vazzy and Hellebuck. So he put up amazing numbers in the SHL, mostly as a backup, but still, it was crazy how good he is, and he's just a generational goalie. Luke Hughes has a really high ceiling as a defenseman. Bit of a riskier player, similar to Kent Johnson, but he is an elite puck-moving defenseman. His biggest concern, though, kind of like Quinn, he's not that great defensively, but I think he can fix up, and it's not as bad as some people say, and he's also an elite skater as well, so still a few years away from being a real impact player, and I'll give him a couple years, as he is one of the youngest, just a few years away from missing the cutoff and actually being a guy for next year's draft. But he is in this year's one. With his age, he's still young, and he is great offensively. Eklund, I think he will go first overall to Buffalo. He's the top guy for Buffalo right now, it looks like, and his ceiling is an elite number 1 center or wing. He plays both, and I would compare him to Sebastian Aho or Gabriel Landeskog, as he is great offensively, also solid defensively. He is one of the older guys, I think born in October, but he put up amazing numbers in the SHL with the Gardens. He put up 23 points, 40 games, playing with Alexander Holtz on his wing. So he put up some great numbers there. And even though he's a bit older, I do think that he has a ceiling to be an elite player. And finally, Brant Clark. He has been my number one for the whole year. That's not changing. He puts up great numbers. I think it's between Clark, Hughes, and Kent Johnson for the highest ceiling, not including Wallstead. He's a goalie. It's completely different. I think Clark has a very good chance of being the best player in this draft. He's an elite puck-moving number one defenseman. That is his potential. I'd compare him to John Klingberg and Shea Theodore, as he's average size about for a defenseman. Not too big, but great offensively. A very smart player, probably the smartest player in this draft on the ice. Great at manning the point, and has a great transition game as well, and also is solid defensively. So he has all the tools, and I think he can jump into the NHL right away next year. He did put up, in this past year, he played with Nové Zemsky in Slovakia. He had 15 points in 26 games as a defenseman. Pretty good. Slovakia is a tough league. So he was playing in the top men's league there. So I think coming in, I would say he's probably still going to play in the OHL again next year, but he can polish his game, and I think can be a very solid player a year from now playing in the NHL. So that is my draft rankings. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, remember to leave a like and subscribe. Comment down below what you think. Remember, this is not a mock draft. I don't think Brant Clark will go first overall. I don't think Buffalo's going to take him, but this is just my personal opinions. The teams don't matter, just the rankings. So I will be coming up with my mock draft soon. Make sure to stay look out for that. But yeah, that is it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.